Hi, everyone. Let's turn up the heat and get cooking. It's time for another episode of Astro Soup. And today it's Libra 4, which of course means nothing to you, but it means a lot to me because it tells me where I am in the time continuum. So I just wanted to say something. So the question in every episode is always going to be, how can we use the planetary energies, not to just to change, transform, cope, plan, those sorts of energies, but to actually nourish ourselves.
Mm.
Because after all, isn't that what I've been wondering for a long time why I chose Astro Soup? Because it seemed to me at some point uh, I liked the name, I wanted to use it, but how did I going to relate that to astrology? And then I realized if you're talking about using the energies and understanding the energies so you can nourish yourself, because a stronger you makes for a the capacity to live your life a little bit more ease as opposed to feeling constantly overwhelmed and undernourished as it sometimes feels in this particular year. 2025 has been a lot like that.
Mm.
And we're going to talk a little bit later, Andy and I, about in a segment called Tips and Tricks, where we're going to talk about the things that you can do to help you stay in your body and and nourish your body appropriately, because food is one thing, but when we're talking about astrology and energies are another way to nourish yourself by understanding them and using them in a way that doesn't make you feel depleted, but actually adds something calming and kind to your life. Probably the best words I can use. So astrology really is like a bowl of hot, yummy, nourishing soup. There's a lot of elements and ingredients in it that can be used in one way or another to make life. Um, I don't know. There's so many adjectives I could use, and apparently I can't think of any of them right now. Exciting, vital, feeling like you're truly engaged in your life and you're not just sitting and things happening to you. So, of course, we're going to start with what's in the bowl. And so the first thing that's in the bowl this week is Mercury cozies up to Mars. So what does that mean? Well, it means the capacity to communicate and thoughts and everything connect to the guy that likes to drive the car. And so when those two things come together, it can create, especially in the sign of Scorpio, a lot of um, I don't even know sometimes how to describe it. There's so much passion and energy in it, but there also is because Mercury and Mars essentially, get along well with each other. Mercury wants to fuel internal thought and communication, and Mars likes to get things done. But when they come together in a water sign, it's a little bit more challenging. Although Mars is at home in Scorpio, in fact, it pretty much loves Scorpio, but still, it's water. So if you think about Mars and Scorpio being a speedboat, uh, then you can realize, well, so what is the speed? Is there a speed limit? And if you add Mercury in there, it's kind of like, well, whatever I think, if I'm combined with Mars, whatever I think needs to be shared. It doesn't matter what it is. And so there's not an awful lot of self-editing that goes along with that particular combination. I think I talked about this before, just being careful about what comes out of your mouth. Now, interestingly enough, when they come together and cozy up to each other, the moon is in Libra. And so that will help calm the waters a little bit. And of course, this is prior to the new moon that this is happening. So often there, again, a lot of stuff is going to surface that you're not anticipating. So we have to take into account that the moon, when this cozying up takes place, like this, oh, I love you, you're so cute. The moon is going to be in the balsamic phase. And so the balsamic phase often it's very inspiring, it's very imaginative, but there's also a lot of stuff because we're talking about the Scorpio part is stuff surfaces in Scorpio, whether you want it to or not. Now, and everybody has that energy somewhere in their chart. And of course, we're just days away from the sun moving into Scorpio. So we're getting kind of a little bit of a hint of how things are really going to feel. It's like, because Libra by nature is more gentle, more communicative. Scorpio's not necessarily on the planet to communicate. It's on the planet to go deep and to experience, but it likes its privacy. Whereas Libra as well, it is very outgoing by nature. And of course, that's just a generalization. But the very nature of those two energies, we move from a place of I can meet anybody to a place of maybe I don't want to talk to anyone because I'm so in here. So the other thing that's happening in the swirling around in the astro bowl this week is, guess what? Neptune backs up into Pisces, where it has spent the last almost 14 years, or close to 14 years. So it's a kind of like and we associate Neptune with Pisces quite strongly, at least I do. Maybe not all astrologers are on the same page as I am when it comes to that, and that's okay. So again, as it's doing this, the moon is either in the last quarter or it's in the balsamic phase prior to the new moon. Oh no, it's actually in the almost a new moon phase because Neptune backs up into Pisces just I don't even know how it's, but not very long before the sun moves into Scorpio. And so there's this again, we're going to feel a little untethered during this period of time because the new moon isn't again a physicalization of anything. So we have water and we have water entering, and we have some more and more darkness in terms of there not being light. So there's the invitation to go inward. And this year has been a lot like push pull, push pull. 1 minute, let's get rolling, let's get moving, let's get things done. All that air and fire that we had for a few months there, just like I'm ready to rock and roll. And then the rest of the time it's like, can I just go hide under my bed for a while? It's kind of been what the energy's like. And as you can tell, I like to use analogies because I think they really help you get a sense, because I could talk about all the energy, but what does it feel like? So, as always, I've made myself a bunch of notes, and I'm just going to pause. And so the new moon, we're going to talk about that coming up in a minute, but that it does provide during the balsamic phase, getting to the new phase, a more calming effect, so that the Mercury Mars doesn't take us down roads and into places that we don't really want to go. Again, be careful about editing what you're about to say. I had a personal experience with that yesterday. I know I talked about this last week. I thought, sometimes when I look back at what I've said, it's like it actually manifests in my own life. And I actually use that technique to take things down a notch or two. And it's not always easy because, when you're dealing with intense energy, it can be, especially if you have any level of sensitivity, you can get really drawn right into the middle of it before you actually know what's happening. So the moon in Libra offers us an opportunity to just take a breath, as does Neptune and Pisces. So together, it could smooth off any of the rough edges that the Mercury Mars might bring into play. And what else? And there is also a need this week to be aware of resisting the urge to accommodate or placate people versus the need to push things to the limit. there's a middle ground. I don't even like to say that, but there is a way to use those both those energies. You know, relationships are complex things, and I've always been fascinated by them, which is one of the reasons why relationship astrology is my specialty. And we tend to think of relationship only in terms of romance, but all our relationships have a complexity to them that sometimes we wish did not exist. However, that only leads to more problems. So, yeah, this is the part where I wanted to do my weekly color card. But first, I'm going to, because I think this is really going to help. I pulled this card to kind of help us with this last bit of moving from last quarter to the new moon and then moving into the sign of Scorpio. And it comes from, oh my God, where did I put those cards? Okay, I don't remember the name of the deck of cards. But this card is called Communicating Freely, which is a very interesting resonance to that Mercury and that Mars.
Absolutely.
And it like, sometimes I just love synchronicity so much. Like even at this stage, it excites me every time it happens. So, and what does it say on that card? I communicate from the depths of my being. If that's not Mercury Mars in Scorpio, I don't. Speaking as an astrologer, and you can see my producer Andy is nodding her head, so I must have figured that one out. So I just have to. I don't know why. Okay. I know you're not supposed to turn your back on your audience, but I had to. So,
It was very dramatic.
no, this card comes from the Gateway Oracle cards by Denise Lynn. And I really love her decks of cards because they're very positive, but not to the exclusion of reality. Oh, how would I put it that way? So that one I picked ahead of time because, I know sometimes it can be painful watching me try to shuffle cards with my little hands.
And your long
So-
nails.
So one of the reasons why I think, if you don't have a deck of oracle cards, go get one because they're very good for helping you focus your energy and just to reassure you. Like, and when I say that, I'm not talking about tarot cards. I'm talking about oracle cards. Because most oracle cards are designed for every person to use them, no matter where they're at in their life process. Okay, here, and while I was talking, this one popped up. Ooh, okay, well, this card is called Brilliance, and it's interesting because it's some interesting shades of blue, which I always associate. This shade of blue and in this spectrum of blue with the moon.
Mm.
And maybe I can't help it. I can hear that song Blue Moon in my head.
Blue moon.
You saw me
I'm
standing alone.
alone.
Anyway, so this color for some reason is called Brilliance, which means you won't be able to find it anywhere unless you get the deck of cards, but it's Discover Your Brilliance. And that's the interesting thing. I think it really speaks to that new moon, the end of this cycle, and moving into Scorpio, because finding your your lodestar, or whatever you want to call it, is usually within. And everybody brings something. I need to turn off notifications on my computer. I don't like it when I see them. And I'm going to be very calm and not have a tantrum.
Tantrum. We want to see the tantrum.
Anyway, can we have some music? Anyway,
Dun,
so
dun, 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 dun.
apparently I have a feeling we need to pick another card. It might not have been about this coming, I don't know.
I thought the card was speaking to your brilliance.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to say that, but I'm glad you said it. Oh, God. Okay. So why, I realized that I just started pulling color cards and I never really talked about why it might be important to, to because colors everywhere and we all resonate with different kinds of colors and you can often even tell that when you meet someone by the colors of the clothes they wear. It tells you something about them. Now, of course, um, you're going to be looking at that through to some degree through your filter, which is an opportunity for me to remind you that I'm going to share things with you. Some of it might resonate for you. Some of it you might resist. Some of it just may not make any sense to you. And that's okay. That's really okay. Oh, we got bronze again. Strengthen your body, which is very interesting because we're going to be talking about grounding later. Once I get through the lunar rhythms part, we're going to be talking. Then we're going to talk about, then we will be talking about grounding. So this card really comes in handy because it gives you something to focus on. And what grounding is really all about is finding that sense of deeper uh, resilience, deeper connection with your own strength. And you can't really do that if you're not in your body. I know I've tried and doesn't always work. Sometimes I think my brain is all that I require. Unfortunately, there's another part of me that takes up a little more space than my brain. Anyway. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the lunar rhythms we're dealing with for the next few days until the sun moves into Scorpio and before we get to the new moon. So obviously the primary thing is going to be the new moon in Libra. And a lot of times we spend so much time looking at that we're still not paying attention to the actual cycle and how it's about energy moving. And we've just found ways to describe how that energy moves. And so before we get to the new moon in Libra, we're going to be going through the last quarter, which is about release.
Okay.
And the balsamic moon, which is about creating space. So we don't often think about it this way. So when you release things, whether it's physical things, emotional things, you start writing a book you don't like, you decide to burn it. I don't know, but whatever it is you choose to release, what happens when you do that? You end up creating space. And when you get to the balsamic moon, that's where you're inhabiting the space. And energy doesn't like a vacuum. So something is going to enter into that space. And that's part of the process where you get ready for that new moon. And you begin to play with it in your consciousness. And so your dreams during a balsamic moon can be crazy. There can be a lot of stuff going on. And again, I said this last week, I'm going to repeat it. Not everything that crosses your psychic consciousness is necessarily about you. And especially right now with the way things are in the world, and we're not going to get into the weeds about that, but there's a lot of really energy is like flying around. And the more that you open up yourself up, because your intuition and your spirituality are very much connected to your feeling body, which is not the same as your emotional body. I know that doesn't make any sense, so let me explain what I mean by that. Feeling is something that comes naturally. Like I feel, I feel unsafe. And of course, there's lots of, they now have expanded some of the definition of what happens when you feel unsafe. So some people go numb, some people freeze in place. And those two things are not the same thing. Then there's fight, there's flight. And I'm sure there's a couple more that I've forgotten. So often during the balsamic phase, you may feel all of those things. Just because the energy is not, we're in the darkest the darkest part of the moon, because the darkest part of the moon is from the balsamic to the crescent, actually. There was no light at all. And so you can see, like we tend to think of the cycle beginning and ending, as opposed to it just continues to flow. It just continues to flow. Because I'm sure the moon isn't up there going, okay, I just crossed a boundary. Yeah. So so pay attention to anything that you're feeling during that period of time. And don't edit yourself. So, and pay attention to your dreams as much as you possibly can. I don't mean you need to start a dream journal unless that's what you really want. I've been having some very weird dreams. And yeah, just with some violence in them. Not over the, but, and of course that I'm a peace-loving person for the most part. So those kinds of things always kind of like I wake up and think, why am I dreaming that? And again, you can just be processing what's going on in the whole gestalt. Because now that we are so connected by technology, it's not like it was even 200 years ago when you knew everything that was going on in the space that you lived in, but you weren't connected worldwide to everything. We forget that the basis of technology and computers is actually crystals. We forget that.
Wow.
Which is one of the reasons why sometimes it's a good idea to take a break from your computer, because your circuits can get overloaded for no particular reason other than you're on it. So now we get to the happy little new moon in Libra. And what did I write about that? So we're planting seeds for new connections. And that can include new connection to yourself, not just to other people. Insight into how to move forward in existing relationships and partnerships of all kinds. That can include because, any person that, whether it's you're a doctor, a lawyer, a therapist, your best friend, other astrologers, if you know other astrologers or other people, we sometimes get, because the moon does rule habits. And one of the things about a new moon is an opportunity to look at what's a new, set a new goal for yourself that allows you to break some habit that doesn't work for you. And the moon can get pretty comfortable in what it knows. And yet it is also symbolizes the cycle of change. So as with most things, it's more complex than we would like it to think it is. And of course, this new moon is going to happen at the very end of the sign of Libra, not unlike last month when the new moon in Virgo was at the very end of the Virgo cycle. And so we're going to be taking something that we want to plant a seed for in terms of Libra kind of things and move it and take it forward into the sign of Scorpio. And there's bound to be some natural tension because I had an astrology friend once say that each sign takes on a challenge from the preceding sign. And I think there's some validity to that. It's just one of my challenges is often to think that we try to make things too linear instead of just accepting that Libra and Scorpio is a deeper connection and relationship, but not just to others, to ourselves. Again, we all, because of the way we've configured life, we often think of relationships as something outside of us as opposed to something inside of us. And that if we want to show up as ourselves, we need to learn who we are. And nobody said you can't do that during the sign of Libra. There's also going to be finding new ways to appreciate yourself, to relate to yourself. Like, to give you an example, last week, if you didn't watch the podcast, I'm going to let you know that Andy talked to me a lot about remediating my Saturn in Virgo. And I took that information and actually start to create a new kind of connection to a part of me that has always, I thought, been my nemesis, as much as I appreciate it. But we ended up having a conversation because, it's okay if you separate out part of yourself and try to talk to yourself about that, because again, it's seeing something outside yourself so you can actually see it. Well, that's also part of the Libra energy, is getting outside of yourself, but it doesn't mean leaving yourself behind, which is sometimes what happens in Libra. You get so far outside yourself, you leave yourself behind. Does that make any sense, Andy?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I guess it's all how we relate to the self and different ways of relating. And yeah, I see what you're saying.
I almost said it's all relative, but
Ah,
in so many ways, it's all relative. Um, so again, we're in the process of always creating and following that sense of creation as the moon moves through all the signs. And of course, for each person, it's going to be a different experience because not everybody has the same birth chart. And so I try always to talk about this in what might seem more general terms, but more in experiential terms, so that you can tap into that energy and not think of it specifically in terms of a sign. Although, it's hard not as an astrologer for me not to talk about signs, because it's one of the ways I came to understand the world. So what else did I? So you can set a goal, and that's what happens in the new moon. So set a goal, and that can be connected to creating whatever new pathway you think you need to create. As change a habit. Um, I can't remember who said this. I did try to find out that, in order, and I found it interesting that in order to create it takes about 3 weeks of consistent behavior to change a habit, which is 3/4 of the lunar cycle. So to me, that's like from the new moon to the last quarter, because when you get to the last quarter, you're able to let go of whatever old habit you were trying to change. So I love it when you can see research and all these things show us things that actually really reflect how astrology functions and how it reflects the world. So now, of course, because again, there is going to be some natural tension as the new moon is in Libra and we move into Scorpio. So the key becomes, how do you um, remain connected without hiding? Because it can be like, okay, I really think I should do this, but I don't, how am I going to do that? Because, and again, we always think it's about what's outside ourselves as opposed to what's inside ourselves. So there's a connection here between, I'm going to take a deeper understanding into and really, in a way, experience it more deeply. Because Libra is an air sign. So, well, this is in my head, so that must be great. How are you going to take it into the realm of the feeling, of the emotion? Because emotions are an expression of how we feel. So when you feel threatened, some people get angry, some people get quiet. We all have different ways to respond. And again, this is more about observing yourself, which is one of the things that Scorpio can do extremely well, is observe itself from a deeper place. Now, one of the great things about Scorpio is they always want things to be deep, even if they act like they don't. By the way, I think, didn't you just have your Mars return, Andy?
well, my Mars is in Cancer, so I guess it was a
I
few
get
months.
confused.
Well, that's
I
okay.
Well, no, because you have bunches of planets in Cancer. I mean, in
I
Scorpio.
had Mars go over my son, if that's what you mean.
Oh, that's right. So how
Yeah.
was that?
It was fierce. I mean, crocheted a lot of things because it squares my Mars in Cancer, and so I get aggro, and then I aggressively crochet. So but now that I find it in Scorpio, it's quite interesting. Now it's on my Uranus in Scorpio, and so it's like
Wow.
it is looking for the depth kind of what can be fun in a kind of more epic and magical way. So so you're
Well,
talking about when the sun goes into Scorpio after the new moon in Libra.
I know I just think about where your Mars was, and I just went off track because I am sorry, I have five planets in Aquarius and I don't want to do that. So,
Wow.
um,
You're gonna keep everyone guessing if you go off track like that.
okay.
That's good.
So, like I said before, things are going to rise from the depths to be released, to be felt, and to begin anew.
Okay.
So sometimes, we have a tendency, again, it's like I'm a broken record when it comes to this. Remember, it's energy flowing. These are not separate things, they're all connected.
Nice.
So, I don't know, is there anything that you think I might have overlooked or?
No, but I do have to say it's really hard to not talk back to you because you always say things that activate thoughts in me and probably the listener as well. And so it's like as you're talking, I keep thinking about stuff, and it's hard to not talk back to you.
So what are you thinking about?
Oh, I'm just definitely it's I don't look at the horoscope in such a like a micro way. I kind of don't look at the inner planets at this level. So now I'm thinking about the new moon in Libra and how that's happening with the Mercury Mars conjunction in Scorpio. I hadn't even looked at the Mercury Mars conjunction in Scorpio, so that's exciting. I like really peak points like that because that will create some verbal sparring and some I don't want to debating. I mean, I guess, things like that. So I'm actually very excited for that.
Well, it went trotting through my brain, verbal diarrhea. Um,
Oh, interesting. Well, I have something political trotting through my brain, which I never think of things politically, but it did make me think of something political, which I will refrain from saying.
that's probably just as well because we live in two different countries.
Well, it's not even about that kind of politics. I mean,
Oh,
well, okay, maybe I'll say it. Maybe I'll say it. What do you think? Charlie Kirk had a Mercury Mars conjunction in Scorpio.
wow.
And that which
That's
makes sense why he was such a fierce debater. And like, yeah, we don't
He's
necessarily
a
all
perfect
agree.
example of that.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Where it's just like constant fierce battle through the mouth.
I can honestly say that I only heard snippets. I obviously never attended anything where he spoke at length. But he was definitely very passionate about
Yeah,
what he believed.
yeah,
And, that again, it does lead to kind of back to what I was talking about, which is to be aware that uh, we have to be careful not because someone is passionate about something in a way that we're not passionate about it allows us again that opportunity to reflect what it is really matters to us and make it less about whether we agree with them or not because that's part of the challenge of Libra is the need to always one part of Libra wants to agree always about everything, but of course how many famous generals including General Patton were born as Libras, and so Libras make great warriors.
interesting. Yeah, I think Charlie Kirk was a sun and moon in Libra, and the sun conjunct Jupiter in Libra. So,
Wow.
but then he had the Mercury Mars conjunction in Scorpio, so he's like a verbal beast, but he was like fighting for what he considered to be like Libra things. And I don't know, I didn't mean to bring him into this, but I just couldn't believe that energy happened.
Honestly, but I think in this particular instance, it really it shows very clearly the symbolism at work.
Right.
Whether you agree with what he said or not is beside the point. It's just seeing exactly how that energy works and how he used it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think thanks. Um
Okay.
so and now I'm gonna unpin myself and we're gonna talk about
Tips and tricks.
yeah, I was trying to get there, but I wanted to go somewhere else.
I like tips and tricks because of the alliteration.
Well, if you don't know it, I do like alliteration. I
Okay.
never really, okay, so where's the little dots? Oh, remove, oh, I will get used to this one of these days. So this is a new segment we call tips and tricks. And of course, my brain went to, well, it's not the same as remediation. And I thought it's a little bit different because it's, in a sense, it's just, um, it's not so much it, about uh, finding a way around to work with something. In a way that, oh, I'm just talking myself into a corner, so I'm just going to stop right now. Um, so I wanted to talk about with Andy about knowing, any ways you can ground yourself. So I'm going to just say that, I find the energy right now is just peaks and valleys, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So what happens when, and by peak I mean, in my case, you just feel so out of your reality that you're not even sure what it is. And this is a trick that I learned. I'm going to share one, and then Andy's going to share one. And so this is a trick that it does require the participation of another human being. So if you're not feeling grounded, all you need to do is get someone to stand on your feet because it immediately brings your energy right back into your body.
Mm.
When my kids were growing up, they were forever always standing on my feet. And this was, of course, before I met my spiritual mentor. And then when she talked about using this as a technique to get grounded, I thought, oh, my kids were trying to get me grounded. And given the circumstances, it makes perfect sense. Um, of course, you can always also visualize you standing with an energy connection all the way to into the earth. I wouldn't suggest going to the core of the earth because that's actually on fire. So I don't know. That's not likely to make you feel grounded. It might empower you a great deal. So if you, for instance, you wanted to take steps forward in a direction that takes you into a new world, well, you might want to visualize connecting to the core of the earth and the energy that it brings. But in this particular instance, we're talking about how to just breathe. And maybe Andy can speak more about breathing than I can, because it's not always as one of the things I find easy to work with, which is strange since I have so much air planets. So breathing, I have to sometimes consciously remember to breathe,
Mm.
which is one of the other techniques you can use. But
Okay.
Andy, you're up.
All right, grounding. I can't, what's coming to mind for me is eating comfort foods or grounding foods, like, root vegetables, things that I don't know exactly, like earthy foods. For some reason mashed potatoes is coming to mind, but it's something where you eat it and it's like a comfort food and it's kind of heavy and kind of grounds you. Not like eating kale and airy fairy vegetables, but like eating something very like, or like a stew or something, made with love. And so like that, I was thinking of eating grounding foods
And that's an excellent idea. I know I've been doing that myself.
because I'm on a show called Astro Stew. That's the other show I produce. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Can you imagine? I'm just kidding.
Well,
It's this show. It's this show when it's grounded. It's Astro Stew.
I'm just I'm not saying anything about that at all.
I'm just making you laugh.
And that's a good thing because which always reminds me that oh, and it's funny because I wasn't going to say this, but now that you brought it up, that can be also one of the best ways to get back into your body is to go and watch something that makes you laugh
Interesting.
because it takes you into your body. Laughter is a thing that begins in your solar plexus and
Yeah.
moves up, which
Interesting.
is a good way to clear out your solar plexus when it's got lots of stuff in it that, yeah, that,
Yeah, I got another one.
okay, go for it.
Well, I call grounding down stimming, because like when
Yeah.
we get overstim, then we got to down stim. And so for an air person like me, of a Gemini rising, and this might apply to the Mercury Mars conjunction coming up because that energy is going to be so keyed up. I was thinking journaling is very grounding. When you ask they say if you're in a thought spiral, journal it out. Do 3 pages of journaling and just spit out what everything that's bothering you about the situation. And so that, like, when I look at you, we don't often think of grounding in the mental sense, but I think mentally grounding yourself by purging and not talking to another person, because they might stim you, they might unground you in what they say. But when you talk between you and yourself, you will ground yourself on your side of that equation. And
Well, as a person with 7 planets in air signs, I find that sometimes journaling doesn't work for me. I actually get out of my body, not into my body, because I get so much into my head and I already live there a lot of the time. And I actually find, and this is why the reason why I'm bringing this up is so people can realize these are just ideas. You choose what works for you. And you might, while we're talking about this, have something come into your head. I don't know, maybe washing dishes is grounding for you, or vacuuming. Just finding things that help you feel more connected as opposed to somewhere in outer space. But for me, actually talking to people, provided the person's a good listener, because we always forget that the other part of communication is listening. That you cannot have a really true communication with someone if you're not listening to them, which, and how many people do we know? I mean, and I can be guilty of it at times. Somebody will say something and I've got something I have to say. Anyway, so I just offer this up just so you understand that it's what works for you that matters. So when I did the launch episode, and I'm just going to bring up safe space, safe place again, is finding your safe place, which is, just taking moments to really close your eyes and breathe comfortably and ask to be shown what your safe place looks like, because that can be something that brings you back or calms you down. Because, Andy was just talking about overstimulation, and we are overstimulated. Now, I'm not saying that in centuries past people weren't overstimulated, but they were overstimulated in a different way. It doesn't mean that, but when we consider how much we have, the whole world of technology has changed our lives for the last 100 years. It's, if you try, honestly, if I try to think about it, my circuits just want to go, I don't want to think about that. It's just too much, because there's so much involved in it. And we have not necessarily, and part of the reason we're talking about grounding today, we haven't learned how to help our bodies catch up. And the other thing I had written down, well, we want to talk about crystals here, or stones. So that's one of Andy's areas of expertise, and love. I love them too, but I don't always remember. Strangely enough, I don't always remember the grounding ones.
Yeah. Well, I think I got my crystals guide here. I think a lot of Saturn stones as being very grounded, and Saturnian stones are usually on the black spectrum. Some people say, like, here's black crystals on this page. We have black tourmaline, obsidian, hematite, black kyanite. All of these can be grounding stones.
And oh God, now I can't remember the name of it. Shungite.
Oh, shungite, interesting. If you want to be really crazy and ground yourself with stones, build yourself a lead belt. That's actually a metal, but and it's probably poisonous, but I think that would be very grounding. It's just be weighted
That just made me go like this. I'm
or
energetic.
bricks. You could wear bricks in your pocket.
I love kyanite. I love kyanite.
Extreme
And I love
grounding.
tourmaline.
Okay.
Hematite is just too heavy. I once had a pair of hematite earrings, and when I wore them, I was like this, and I just stopped wearing them.
You're
Not
too
because I didn't.
grounded.
Well, no, it was too. Like they're. Of course, this and at some point we're going to talk about the elements in astrology, just not this week, because we're just about running out of time. Yay. Anyway, so I don't know what I was going to say there, and it'll come back when it's supposed to come back. So one other thing. So I'm calling this, and I may come up with this segment called Taking Stock, because we are coming to the end of the Libra cycle. And so in taking stock, you prepare yourself to move forward. So just kind of statements that you can play with. Connect to moments of joy that you've experienced in the last 28 days or whatever. Celebrate what you've accomplished. And I'm just talking about, say, anything. Like the other day, I thought, wow, I've had a really productive day. I thought a lot about my podcast. I cleaned up my house. I did this, I did this, I did this. Sometimes at the end of the day, and this time we're talking about the end of a cycle, but it's to allow you to connect to, things that you may want to carry forward and you may not be aware you want to carry forward. The other is acknowledge anything you initiated, and finally, praise yourself for facing and overcoming challenge. Because whether we realize it or not, life has its challenges, and it can be something as simple as I figured out how to put a light bulb, because I'm trying to figure that out right now. It's not complex, big things. It's if you play with that statement and you want to experience it, just what pops into your head, not trying to logically figure it out. And this week I was actually prepared for what's up. And so I went on the internet and looked for some quotes. And I really love this one as a closing to Libra, which is throw kindness around like confetti.
Aw, I love
And
that.
so, and I can't, all it said was unknown, so nobody knows who said it, which is too bad if anybody knows it. And well, at least AI said nobody knows who said it. So thanks again for joining Andy and I in our little adventure, or our big adventure, or a silly adventure, whatever. You can use whatever adjective you would like. Just don't tell me what it is anyway. So until the next time, be true to yourself. Eek.